Kael Mercer had only minutes before comms went blind. The room ahead was too clean, too quiet, too perfect, like someone inside their own system had written the trap and was waiting for them to walk in. If Kael was wrong, his team would vanish in the dark. If he was right, the enemy was not outside. The enemy was already on the inside. So who built this room, and why did they want Helix to die here? The corridor lights stuttered as if the station itself was blinking. The air smelled of hot metal, and the deck trembled under Kael Mercer's boots like something was waking up below. Their communications hissed with static. Not normal static, but the kind that made every voice sound far away, as if the corridor had started swallowing sound. Somewhere ahead, a soft click repeated, patient, even, like a timer that did not care who heard it. Kael raised a fist and slowed the line. Hold position, he said. No one stopped. A heavy door slid open with a lazy hiss. The squad pushed through together, too tight and too loud, and Kael saw the geometry at once. Clean angles, clean sight lines, silence that did not belong. If this was a trap, it was built by someone who knew exactly how they moved. Kael's mouth went dry as he checked his wrist display. The shuttle link was already degrading, and that meant they had minutes before extraction went blind. One question hit him, sharp and simple. Who inside their own system had written this room? He lifted 2 fingers, warning for a slow pace. Back out, he said. The lead striker ignored him and stepped in. Kael followed anyway, because leaving them was not an option. His goal was the same as always, keep the team alive, get proof, bring it home. The click ahead kept counting. 12 hours earlier, Kael arrived at Asterian Bastion inside a blunt-nosed shuttle stamped with Earth strategic command markings. The station hung over a pale moon, its hull crowded with radiators and docking arms that looked like claws. Kael had spent most of his career boarding ships and clearing tight compartments. He had learned that panic killed faster than bullets, and he had learned to take insults like weather. On the landing deck, he was shorter than most of the mixed species contingent. He felt it before anyone spoke. A tall amphibious trooper brushed his shoulder on purpose. A thin-bodied scout laughed as Kael steadied his kit case. Earth sent a theory, man, someone muttered. Another voice answered. Earth is good at speeches, not at work. Kael did not turn his head. He watched how they moved. Hands near holsters, eyes tracking exits even while they smiled. A woman in a dark field coat stepped onto a crate and raised a palm for quiet. Her insignia marked her as Commander Sarisval, and her gaze cut through the crowd like a laser line. You are here because your governments signed the charter, she said. You are also here because a criminal network has been stealing technology and vanishing into the outer routes. Behind her, a wall screen showed grainy footage. Cargo pods split open. Crews bound. Empty space where ships should have been. The tag on the feed read the Black Lattice, and the file listed raids that crossed too many jurisdictions. Saris let the image linger, then nodded to the man beside her. Director Oren Koss of the Concordium Operations Directorate did not waste time with welcome words. We are forming Task Force Helix, Koss said. Your first assignment will come fast. If you cannot operate under pressure, step out now. No one moved. Kael kept his face blank, but he felt the sentence settle into his ribs. They marched the recruits through security into a sleeping block carved into the station spine. The bunks were stacked tight, and the ventilation carried a dry chemical tang that reminded Kael of field hospitals. A few recruits kept talking, loud enough for him to hear. They did not say his name, and they did not need to. That night, Kael unpacked with ritual calm. He laid out an arc-line carbine, a compact blind wave disruptor, and a Vesper cutter that looked like a tool until it was in the hand. He checked seals on his suit, cleaned grit from connector, and stowed a small roll of medical patches. Then he closed the case and told himself, silently, that respect was not a mission objective. On the way to morning muster, a hallway panel flickered with an internal notice. The text scrolled too fast, but Kael caught enough to stop. Asterian Bastion, operational exercise, deployment window within days. Projected casualty rate above standard training thresholds. He heard boots behind him and stepped away, as if he had not seen it. The word stayed anyway, sharp and cold. Training began with heat and noise. The station adjusted gravity for mixed species, and it never felt perfectly right for anyone. Kael could see who used that as an excuse. He could also see who adapted. The drill hall was a long cavity lined with impact foam and sensor rails. Every movement was recorded by cameras and pressure plates, and every mistake became a lesson written in a muscle. Kael was paired with people who did not want him. They made that clear. They broke formation on purpose. They spoke over him in briefings. They ignored his hand signals during live-fire simulations. When a heavy striker forgot a blind corner, Kael shifted to cover it. When a fast scout chose the loud route, Kael took the quiet path and still arrived first. A technician named Miraquel watched from a control booth. She said nothing, but she tapped notes into a console with narrowed eyes, like she was counting how often Kael prevented a failure. After 3 days, bruises and pride filled the same space. A recruit slammed a training blade into Kael's guard and leaned close. "Why do you keep smiling?" the recruit asked. "Do you think silence makes you look dangerous?" Kael breathed once. "I think noise makes you sloppy," he said. The next test was a team movement run through a mock cargo maze. The walls shifted on rails, the floor changed grip, and the overhead lights pulsed to simulate power loss. "Left lane is a choke point," Kael said. The group went left anyway. A stun bolt clipped a teammate's shoulder, and the run failed. Saris called an end, and the room filled with curses. Koss did not react. "You will learn to hear each other," he said, "or you will die together." Juno Cade sat beside Kael after chow. Juno was a lean marksman from a dry world, and his voice was quieter than the rest, but the doubt was still there. "You were right in the maze," Juno said. "That does not mean you will be right in the field." Kael nodded once. "It means I can see patterns," he said. "You can decide what to do with that." 2 evenings later, Task Force Helix was called into a mission room. A holographic map rose from the table, showing a derelict logistics. Site labeled Moro Freight Yard. Koss spoke in short blocks of information. Outer corridor. Old transit hub. The Black Lattice used it as a staging point. "We go in, we secure, we recover, we extract." A striker in the back laughed. "Sounds like a sweep," the striker said. "We have done sweeps since we were hatchlings." Kael stared at the map. Traffic lanes were misaligned. Power signatures were too even. Security timestamps had gaps where there should have been noise. He lifted a hand. "Sir, it reads like a set piece," Kael said. "Too clean. We should assume a trap." The striker turned to look at him, slow and theatrical. "Earth is afraid of shadows," the striker said. "Stay behind us and take notes." Saris did not smile. She also did not back Kael. "We deploy at first shift," she said. As they filed out, Kael caught Miraquel watching him again. Her expression was unreadable, but her fingers paused over the console like she wanted to say something and chose not to. Kael walked to the armory with slow, steady breathing. The station felt quieter than it should, and that quiet made his skin itch. The drop shuttle latched onto the outer ring of Moro Freight Yard with a dull thump. Inside, the air was stale and cold, and old warning lights blinked without rhythm. Kael moved first and set a small sensor puck at the hatch. It read atmosphere, pressure, and trace chemicals, then sent a simple green signal to his wrist. "No toxins. No vacuum breach." That was the problem. It should not have been that easy. The team advanced down a corridor lined with stripped conduit. Metal panels shook with a low hum, like a compressor cycling far below. Kael raised 2 fingers and pointed to a ceiling junction. A camera housing sat there, too new for the rest of the place. "Eyes up," Kael said. "Slow the pace." The striker at the front shoved a palm onto the door control. "Stop whispering," the striker said. "We are not prey." The door opened. Kael saw the kill box. Clean angles. Stacked cover. No debris. No random clutter. A long sight line that led to darkness. "Back out." "Now," Kael said. A scout laughed and stepped in. The floor dropped with a hard snap. Panels split, and crown-bind restraints burst upward like nets made of light. Kael felt energy bands catch his forearm and burn cold. He rolled with the pull and drove his Vesper cutter into a service seam, cutting a thin strip of metal free. Gas hissed from vents in the walls. His wrist display still showed green, but a second icon went dark. The shuttle link was jammed. Tight. Local. That meant the ambush was timed to the second. Two teammates collapsed almost at once. Limbs loose. Eyes unfocused. Kael held his breath and pressed a seal mask over his face. He jammed the cut metal strip into a latch recess and forced a service panel open enough to slip through. A stunned bolt cracked past his ear and scorched the wall. He dropped into the maintenance crawl space, landed hard on a rib duct, and moved before the next shot came. In the dark, he heard voices. Calm. Trained. That was worse than rage. Kael crawled to a grate and looked down into the capture bay. His team was already being stripped of weapons and bound with physical cuffs over the energy bands. He watched guard rotations and counted footsteps. He listened to the pattern of a door lock cycling. Then he placed the blind wave disruptor against the duct wall and set it to a tight burst. The corridor lights below flickered. Security cameras froze on old frames for half a second. Kael dropped through the grate and hit the floor behind a stack of crates. He moved like a shadow that had learned the map. He took the first guard down with a silent strike to the next seal. He did not fire his carbine yet, because gunfire would wake the whole site. He reached the nearest teammate, cut the cuffs, and leaned close. Can you walk? Kael asked. The teammate blinked, shaking off the gas. Yes, the teammate said, voice thick. Kael moved to the next, then the next, freeing them in an order that kept the loudest breathers last. When the fourth cuff fell, a guard turned and caught Kael's face. The guard shouted. The trap became a fight. Kael raised the arc-line carbine and fired 2 control shots. The pulses hit armor joints and dropped the guard, and burned polymer stung the air. The team, half awake and angry, scrambled for recovered weapons. Some looked at Kael like they had never seen him before. Form on me, Kael said. Cover the rear. Do. Not chase. They moved, but panic pulled at them. Kael shoved a teammate into cover and pointed down the corridor. That corner is a crossfire, he said. Do not feed it. They reached a junction and found the exit sealed. Above, metal clanged as more guards poured in from catwalks. The striker who mocked Kael earlier lifted a weapon and froze. There were too many targets, and the striker's hand shook. Kael stepped into the open, using his suit plate as a partial shield. He fired at the overhead lights and plunged the far end into darkness, then tossed a flash charge toward the catwalk. The burst lit the air white. Shadows scattered, and guards cursed and stumbled. Move, Kael said. Left side. Now. Juno Cade covered Kael with steady fire. For the first time, the team moved like one body. They rushed the catwalk stairs, cleared the top platform, and found an emergency hatch that led to the outer ring. By the time the last guard fell, the Black Lattice fighters were already retreating into deeper tunnels. Kael did not follow. A chase would become another box. He knelt near a drop kit and pulled out a small transmitter with a Concordia maintenance tag. The encryption stamp was not civilian, and it matched internal protocols. Kael slipped the transmitter into his pocket. Sarisval caught up, breathing hard, eyes wide with controlled fury. Someone wrote this trap with our own rules, Kael said. They did not need to guess. Saris's jaw tightened. Director Koss would want proof. Kael already knew proof was harder to keep than secrets. After-action debriefs rarely felt personal. This one did. Task Force Helix stood in a semicircle inside Asterion Bastion's operations bay, while medical teams cleared the last of the Morrow freight yard residue from their suits. Bruises showed through seal marks. Director Oren Koss kept the praise short. He spoke about discipline, extraction timing, and lessons written in a muscle memory, then authorized a unit commendation and ended the meeting. As people filed out, a few troopers who had mocked Kael days earlier slowed beside him. One offered a stiff hand. Another stared at the floor and forced out an apology. Kael accepted the gestures without warmth and without spite. He did not need them. He needed the team to listen next time. Commander Sarisval caught him near the doorway. Her eyes flicked to the pocket where he had stowed the capture transmitter. Give it to Mira Quell, Saris said. Quietly, Mira met him in a narrow service alcove where coolant pipes sweated against the wall. She did not ask how he got the transmitter. She took it with gloved fingers, turned it over once, and plugged it into a palm reader. It is running Concordium handshake code, Mira said. Not a civilian spoof. Whoever built that trap had access to our maintenance keys. Kael watched her eyes move as she read. Can you trace it? He asked. Not cleanly, Mira replied. But I can tell you this. They knew where our cameras were blind. They also knew which logs would be checked last. She sealed the transmitter in a pouch and looked up. Do not talk about it in open rooms, she said. The station listens. Within hours, the station's rumor machinery did what it always did. First, the story became that Kael had known the trap because Earth Strategic Command fed him special intel. Then it became that he was placed on the team as a political favor. By evening, recruits were saying he was protected by a private agreement with the Concordium Operations Directorate. The lie moved faster than any correction. Kael ignored it until it changed behavior. People asked questions that were not really questions. People watched him like they were waiting for him to slip. That was when the new arrival stepped onto the deck. Varric Thorn arrived with a flawless service record and an easy smile. He wore confidence like a uniform, and the room adjusted around him. Even Saris treated him with careful respect. Varric learned names fast. He shook hands, offered jokes, and made people feel seen. When he reached Kael, his smile stayed, but his eyes did not. So you are the one from Earth, Varric said. Smaller than the stories. Kael met his gaze. Stories are cheap, he said. Varric laughed politely. We will see what is real, he said. The next week became a parade of capability trials. Kumbalan. Breach timings. Sensor reading under interference. Team leadership under stress. Kael kept placing first with cold consistency. Varric kept landing just behind him. Each second place finish sharpened Varric's tone. His compliments turned into little cuts, wrapped in formal words. He offered help that sounded like correction in public, and he asked Sarah's questions that made it seem like Kael needed oversight. Kael answered with silence and results. That silence drove Varric harder. One night, Juno sat across from Kael in the mess, keeping his voice low. You feel that? Juno asked. He is turning people. Kael did not look up. Let him, he said. Juno hesitated. Why, he asked. Because if someone is pushing lies, Kael said, they will push them too far. The next morning, Mira sent Kael a short note on a secure channel. Watch who asks about the transmitter. Kael read it once, then deleted it. As he left the booth corridor, he saw Varric at the far end, speaking softly with a logistics clerk. Varric glanced up, smiled like nothing mattered, and kept talking. By the time the shift siren rang, the rumor had one new twist. Kael Mercer was not just favored. He was dangerous, and Varric Thorn was making sure everyone heard it. 2 days later, a second mission order landed with a heavier stamp. Kael entered the briefing room and saw extra security at the door. Saris did not sit. Koss did not waste time. A classified technology asset has been stolen, Koss said. Designation the Aegis Prism. If the Black Lattice stabilizes it, they gain a new kind of leverage. No one asked what it did. They did not need details to understand the consequence. Recovery is mandatory, Saris said. No improvisation. No hero work. Kael studied the timeline on the holographic map. The theft window was narrow, and the escape route was clean. Too clean. On the way out, a teammate caught up to him. Do you think it was another setup? The teammate asked. Kael kept walking. I think someone is testing how we respond, he said. That afternoon, the station ran a closed-door rehearsal. Routes, roles, and signals were drilled, and every step was logged. Kael noticed the same pattern as before. Small questions asked at the wrong time. Varric drifted close during an equipment check. You look tense, Varric said. Afraid Earth will lose its favorite status? Kael slid a magazine into his arc-line carbine and locked it with a click. You talk too much, Kael said. Varric's smile thinned. I talk to win, he said. Kael did not answer. He made a decision instead. He stopped trying to persuade anyone with warnings, and he started trying to catch a hand in the act. He asked Mira for systems review and kept it casual. He watched who followed the request. He left small errors in non-critical files, just enough to see who corrected them. He spoke one false route aloud within earshot of only a few people. By night, he had his pattern. Someone accessed rehearsal data in a way that was not standard. The access signature was masked, but the timing was not. It matched Varek's movements too closely to be coincidence. Kael did not confront him yet. He waited for a moment with witnesses. The next morning, Saris convened a tactical huddle with the core squad. Juno was there, jaw tight. Mira was there with a tablet held like a shield. Koss joined by secure link. Varek walked in last, relaxed like he owned the room. Kael placed the tablet on the table and slid the display outward. "We have a leak," Kael said. Varek tilted his head. "A serious claim. From Earth," he said. Kael tapped the log chain, then the access tree, then the time-stamped overlay. The data did not accuse by emotion. It accused by clocks and doors that open when they should not. Mira spoke, voice steady. The signature was altered, but the path was not. The same user pattern appears in the Morrow transmitter audit. Juno stared at Varek. "You sold us," Juno said. Varek's smile broke for the first time. Not into shame, but into anger. "You were all ready to worship him," Varek snapped, pointing at Kael. "A short man from a backwater. You let him make you feel small." Sarah stepped forward. "Stand down," she said. Hands visible. Varek's eyes flicked to the security bots at the door. He calculated faster than most people could blink. Then he moved. He slammed a palm onto the table edge, and a pulse device rolled out. Interference spilled across the room. Lights dimmed, and door locks clicked and stuttered. Kael lunged, but Varek was already out, fast and practiced. By the time the bots recovered, Varek had reached the secure vault corridor. Saris shouted into communications. "Seal the prison bay now," she said. A warning chime echoed down the hall. Too late. Kael ran, boots hammering, and saw the vault door half open, forced by an override code that should not exist. Inside, the storage cradle sat empty. The Aegis prism was gone. A minute later, a message hit the team channel. It was a single line, tagged with a black lattice cipher. "If you're so good, come take it." Kael stared at the text until the letters felt like heat. Saris's voice turned quiet behind him. That quiet carried more fear than shouting. "He is not running," Saris said. "He is recruiting." The pursuit order came before the station finished locking down. Task Force Helix boarded a fast cutter and burned toward an outer installation flagged by the Prism's last known emissions. The transit was short, but the silence inside the ship stretched. Juno sat opposite Kael and checked the same strap twice. "You knew," Juno said. "I suspected," Kael answered. "I wanted to be wrong." Saris stood by the navigation console. "We do not chase rage," she said. "We chase a target." The installation resolved on the forward screen. A layered structure stitched into an asteroid pocket, with old hull plates forming the outer shell. New sensor arrays glittered like teeth. Kael led the breach team through the first ring. Mechanical traps tried to funnel them into narrow lanes, and he marked pressure seams and cut a bypass with the Vesper cutter. The team moved clean, finally reading his hand signals without pride in the way. Inside the second ring, the surveillance system woke. Cameras tracked them with smooth precision, and doors tried to separate them. A hostile drone pod dropped from a ceiling bay and fired in short bursts. Kael dropped behind a support beam and returned fire. Juno flanked. Saris took the high line. The drone pod fell sparking, and the corridor filled with the smell of burned insulation. They pushed deeper, expecting resistance. Instead, they found silence. The inner vault chamber was intact, sealed, and empty. No prism, no varik. Only stage containers placed to look like hurried packing. Saris cursed under her breath. "He is leading us," she said. Kael knelt and touched a scorch mark on the floor. The burn pattern was fresh, and the exit had been planned, not improvised. A delayed charge detonated 2 corridors back, throwing a wave of heat down the hall. Kael turned, saw the flash, and moved without thinking. A hand caught his harness and yanked him behind cover. The blast slammed into the wall where he had been. Kael blinked, ears ringing. A woman crouched beside him, visor up, breathing. Hard. Lyra Sen. Kael had seen her on the range, quiet and precise, not interested in station politics. He had not worked close with her until now. You looked the wrong way, Lyra said. Kael steadied his weapon. You saved my spine, he said. Lyra nodded once. Try to keep it, she said. They moved together after that, not by announcement, but by instinct. When Kael checked a corner, Lyra covered the opposite angle. When Lyra crossed an open gap, Kael put his body between her and the most likely fire lane. In a tight stairwell, a hostile fired down from above. Kael shoved Lyra to the inner wall and took the hit on his shoulder plate. The impact bruised through the padding, but the plate held. Lyra looked at the dent, then at him. Are you okay? She asked. Kael forced a breath. Still functional, he said. They cleared the stairwell and reached a control node where a map of nearby routes pulsed. Kael scanned it and felt his stomach drop. The installation was not a destination. It was a relay point. Varric had used it to scatter false trails. He had already moved the prism toward a populated region where panic would cover his next step. Saris joined them, face tight. We are behind, she said. Kael pointed at the route projection. He is building something larger, Kael said. The prism is a key, not a prize. A new alert flashed across the comm channel. A civilian district reported power distortions and forced evacuations. The tag read Sable Ward. Lyra's voice went quiet. That is a residential block, right? She asked. Kael felt the old transmitter proof like a weight in his mind. Someone inside the system had been feeding Varric time. He looked at Saris. If he hits Sable Ward, we will be blamed for failing again, Kael said. Saris held his gaze. Then we do not fail, she said. Smoke rolled through Sable Ward like a low tide, pushing between towers and into transit lanes. The alarms were not one clean siren, but a messy stack of warning tones fighting for priority. Kael Mercer heard people screaming before he saw them. A maintenance drone slammed into a storefront and burst into sparks. Streetlights flickered, died, and came back in harsh strobe. A child-sized service bot skittered away on 3 legs, dragging a broken cable. Lyra landed beside Kael at the edge of a plaza. Her boots splashed through spilled coolant, and she lifted her rifle, then lowered it when she saw the crowd. The enemy was using bodies as cover. Saris's voice came through the channel, tight and controlled. We split, Saris said. One element locks down the threat. One element keeps civilians alive. Kael did not argue. He looked at Lyra, then at the exits. The plaza had 3 main corridors and a service tunnel behind the housing blocks. They want us chasing ghosts, Kael said. If we chase, we lose them in noise. Lyra nodded. Then we stop the noise from becoming their door, she said. Kael sent Juno and 2 others toward the roof line to spot movement. He took Lyra and a small team toward the service tunnel, where an escape route could form. The air tasted like burned plastic and ozone. A man stumbled toward them with a blood-smeared sleeve and wide eyes. They locked the transit gates, the man said. My partner is trapped inside. Kael kept his voice calm. Where's the control kiosk? He asked. The man pointed with a shaking hand. Kael moved, cutting through the crowd with his shoulder and the authority of someone who refused to panic. The kiosk panel was dark, but the lock indicator pulsed warning red. Lyra leaned close, scanning the casing. This is not a power outage, she said. Someone is forcing a lock state. Kael pulled out his blind wave disruptor and set it for a narrow pulse. He did not fight the whole system. He needed seconds. He pressed the device to the panel, waited for the next strobe, then triggered it. The lock indicator blinked, hesitated, and dropped to amber. Move now, Kael said. Lyra stepped into the opening and lifted her arm, guiding the first wave of civilians with firm gestures. She did not shout, and she did not plead. People obeyed because her certainty was louder than fear. Gunfire cracked from behind a kiosk, and tried to scatter the crowd without hitting targets. Kael saw a figure in a maintenance coat firing blind, then slipping behind a pillar as civilians surged away. They're shepherding panic, Kael said. Lyra kept pushing people through the gate. Then we shepherd them into a dead end, she said. Kael moved along the tunnel mouth and planted a sensor puck. He watched its readout, then placed a second puck at the far corridor. The 2 devices formed a simple tripline. If a leader runs, they run through here, Kael said. We do not need a face first. Minutes stretched. The strobe slowed, then steadied. The crowd thinned, leaving only stragglers and the smell of smoke. Kael heard rapid footfalls. Someone moved against the flow, fast and low. The sensor puck chirped once. Kael stepped into the corridor and raised his rifle. A figure in a gray coat froze, then lifted both hands. Under the coat was a compact case with a hard seal. The figure's eyes flicked toward Lyra, then back to Kael. You cannot hold all exits, the figure said. Kael shifted his stance to block the corridor and force a choice. The figure bolted anyway. Kael fired one shot into the floor near the feet, close enough to stop without killing. The figure slipped and the case clanged. Lyra was already there. She pinned the arms and snapped cuffs on with a practice motion. You picked the wrong ward, Lyra said. Kael grabbed the sealed case and scanned it. The marker was not a standard serial, and it carried a black lattice cipher tag. Lyra looked at him through smoke-streaked visor glass. Her voice dropped, nearly lost under distant alarms. I do not want to lose you, Kael, she said. Kael felt the sentence hit deeper than recoil. He did not reach for her, because hands were still needed for work. He nodded once, slow. Then stay with me, he said. They handed the detainee to local security and pushed toward extraction. Sable wards still shook with aftershocks, but it stood. The civilians were alive. The enemy did not get clean chaos. On the shuttle back to the cutter, Kael received a data package on a secure channel. It used Concordium formats, but the signature was wrong in subtle ways. Myra's text came with it. This came through a relay that should not be active. Kael opened the package. Inside was a transfer schedule for Varric Thorn, route, guard rotations, and a time window that looked generous. Lyra read over his shoulder, brow tightening. That is a dare, she said. Kael felt the cold edge of it. Or a lure, he said. At the bottom of the schedule was a short line, signed with a black lattice cipher. Bring your best. I am tired of chasing your shadows. The trail narrowed over the next week through small hits and quiet confirmations. A cashier. A safe room there. A courier intercepted with a half-burned map. Each piece pointed toward Iron Veil Works, an old industrial complex that once processed ship plating. Now it looked dead, layered with pipes and empty chambers that swallowed sound. Kael could smell rust and old solvent even through his mask. Taskforce Helix staged at the edge of the complex before dawn. Saris kept the plan tight and simple. We do not rush the front, Saris said. We squeeze. Kael studied the overhead scan. They have watchers, Kael said. They also have supply lines. We cut those and they move. Lyra stood close, not touching him, but close enough that Kael felt her presence like a steady weight. Juno watched them with a look that mixed respect and worry. The first breach was silent. Kael used the Vesper cutter to open a maintenance hatch without a spark. Lyra slipped through behind him and covered the corridor. They moved 2 to 3 steps at a time, then paused to listen. The enemy built the interior like a maze, but Kael saw the logic. Guards protected what mattered, and what mattered needed power, oxygen, and food. Kael placed 2 disruptors on a junction box and timed the pulse between camera sweeps. The cameras froze for a heartbeat, then jumped. Lyra whispered. Now, she said. They crossed the open span and dropped into a shadowed pipe bay. Above them, voices argued in a low, clipped tone. Not panic. Procedure. Kael felt a sour confirmation. Varric had not only sold routes. He had sold method. They found a staging room full of sealed ration packs and battery bricks. Kael cut the seals and let air hiss. He did not destroy everything. He ruined timing. Farther in, they hit resistance. A squad of black lattice fighters stepped out from behind a pipe stack and opened fire. The shots were controlled. They aimed to pin, not spray. Kael took cover, then shifted angles instead of trading shots. He pointed, and Lyra moved with him. Juno came in on the flank and dropped one shooter with a clean pulse. The rest fell back toward a deeper corridor. Kael did not chase into the dark. He waited, then took a side route that would cut off retreat. He felt the enemy's surprise when retreat became a trap. In the inner vault chamber, the Aegis prism sat on a cradle that looked too delicate for the fear it carried. It was not a glowing relic. It was compact, wrapped in heat shielding, with ports that matched infrastructure more than weapons. Varric Thorn stood near it like it belonged to him. His suit looked like field gear, but cleaner than anyone hiding should manage. His smile was smooth and bright. "Kael," Varric said. "You made it." Kael kept his rifle steady. "Put your hands up," Kael said. Varric spread his palms, as if amused. "You want applause?" Varric said. "That is the problem. Earth taught you to crave it." Kael did not blink. "You think this is about pride?" Kael asked. Varric's eyes sharpened. "It is about order," Varric said. "You broke mine." Lyra took a half step and covered Varric's shoulder line. "You sold the team," Lyra said. "You sold civilians." Varric laughed once, short and bitter. "Civilians are always currency," Varric said. "The Concordium just pretends otherwise." Ceres's team pressed in from the other side. Varric saw the net closing, and the calculation behind his face went hard. He reached for control pad. Kael fired into the pad first. It shattered, and sparks jumped and died. Varric's hand froze. Then he moved toward the prism cradle like he would grab it and run. Lyra was faster. She struck his wrist with the butt of her weapon and drove him to the floor. Juno snapped cuffs on. Ceres stepped in, breathing hard. Varric looked up at Kael with a grin that did not fit the moment. "You think you caught me?" Varric said. Kael leaned closer. "I did," Kael said. Varric lowered his voice until only Kael and Lyra could hear. "There is another group," Varric whispered. "They are already on your route. You will not see them until they are inside your guard line." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Who are they?" Lyra asked. Varric lifted his cuffed hands slightly, mimicking surrender. "People who do not wear badges," Varric said. "People who do not care about your loss." Ceres ordered the prism sealed and moved to extraction. Kael watched Varric, not because he feared a sudden strike. He feared the truth inside that warning. As they pulled out of Iron Veil Works with the Aegis. Prism secured, Kael felt no relief. He felt the air before a storm. The convoy moved through the driftline verge where signal coverage thinned and patrol routes spread wide. The cutter ran dark, using passive sensors and minimal emission. Ceres wanted no attention. Kael wanted no surprises. Lyra sat across from Kael in the transport bay, helmet off, hair damp with sweat. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. "You believe him," Lyra said. Kael kept his voice low. "He did not sound like a bluff," Kael said. Varric sat in the restraint frame, wrists bound, ankles locked. He looked comfortable, which made Kael more uneasy than any threat display. Kael stared at him. "Comfortable?" Kael asked. Varric tilted his head. "You brought me back into the system," Varric said. "The system always creates gaps." The first sign of trouble was not a radar spike. It was a hush on the channel, like a hand covering a mouth. Myra's voice broke through with distortion. "External interference," Mira said. "It is localized. It is not random." Ceres turned. "Form a hard ring," Ceres said. "Keep the prisoners sealed." Then the ambush arrived. Shaped charges hit the lead escort craft. Not enough to tear it apart, but enough to force it offline. Another burst struck the rear. The convoy split by distance and debris. From the dark, a fast skiff slid in close, hugging a blind side. Grapples fired and bit into hull seams. Figures in matte armor moved with trained speed. They were not Black Lattice Raiders with wild timing. They moved like professionals who rehearsed on a replica. Lyra sprinted to the restraint frame and braced between Varric and the boarding point. Kael grabbed her shoulder. "Fall back," Kael said. "We can hold from cover." Lyra shook her head. "If they reach him, we lose everything," Lyra said. A breech cutter screamed against metal. The inner hatch trembled. Lyra raised her rifle and fired at the seam as it opened, forcing them to slow. Kael took position beside her and fired in short, controlled bursts. 2 boarders fell, but more replaced them, stepping over bodies without hesitation. A calm voice came over a local channel. "Ashtide Marauders," the voice said. "Hand over the asset." Ceres answered, voice sharp. "You are under Concordium jurisdiction," Ceres said. "Stand down." The reply carried no emotion. "Jurisdiction does not exist here," the voice said. Lyra took a hit to the thigh plate and staggered. Kael caught her and dragged her toward the bulkhead. Lyra shoved against him, jaw clenched. Not yet, Lyra said. A second explosion hit the midline compartment. The floor bucked. A wall panel tore free and threw shrapnel into the bay. Kael felt metal bite into his shoulder. He stayed upright by force alone. In the chaos, a boarder reached the restraint frame. Kael fired, but the shot hit the frame, not the target. The boarder slammed a key module into the lock. The restraints released with a sharp click. Varric rose like the cuffs were a costume. He grabbed a fallen weapon and fired into the ceiling to trigger a sprinkler foam system. White spray poured down, blinding and muffling sound. Lyra turned toward Varric, trying to tackle him. A boarder stepped between them and struck her with a baton in a clean, brutal arc. Lyra fell hard. Kael lunged, but another charge detonated and split the compartment with heat and smoke. The bay became two spaces separated by fire and falling metal. Kael crawled through foam and sparks, shouting Lyra's name, but his voice vanished under the roar. He saw her silhouette on the other side for a second, braced against the collapsing hatch. Her hand lifted once, like she was signaling him to stop. Then the hatch buckled. The section beyond dropped away into darkness. Fire swallowed the gap. Kael saw only falling fragments and white foam turning gray. The skiff detached and vanished into the verge. Varric was gone with it. When the escorts regrouped and limped toward a safe corridor, Kael stood in the ruined bay, staring at the broken edge where Lyra had been. Medical teams searched the debris field, but there was no clean recovery. Saris approached, face set like stone. Kael, stand down, Saris said. You are injured. You are compromised. Kael did not look at her. He is still out there, Kael said. Kas's voice came through, distant and cold. You are relieved, Kas said. You will return to Asterian Bastion for evaluation. That is an order. Kael felt the order like a weight on his chest. He understood the logic, and that made the pain worse. If the system was right, he would never touch Varric again. If the system was wrong, Varric would keep selling death until someone else paid the price. Kael Mercer woke to the taste of smoke that was not there. His room in Ravelin Dock shook with the rumble of freight engines. For 1 second he was back in the convoy bay, foam falling, Lyra vanishing behind fire. He sat up, hands open, waiting for his pulse to stop lying. A bottle on the floor was empty, and another bottle on the table was half full, like a dare. He had been told to return to Asterian Bastion for evaluation. He had not gone. He told himself he was taking time. Then he started using alcohol to make time disappear. The bar below his rented room smelled of metal polish and cheap fuel. Dock workers drank to forget shift injuries. Smugglers drank to celebrate new ones. Kael drank because silence was worse than noise. In daylight, he pretended to be finished. In the long hours when the buzz faded, he was not finished at all. He spread stolen transit logs across his bed and traced routes with a finger that did not shake. He compared departure windows, refuel gaps, and the same odd pattern he saw in the driftline verge. A rescue team that arrived with precision and left no paperwork behind. Ashtide Marauders were not random raiders. They moved like a unit with steady supply, clean maintenance, and disciplined communications habits. They also showed up in places only an insider could predict. Kael stared at a list of port calls and felt rage harden into something colder. It was not only about Lyra anymore. If this network stayed alive, someone else would stand in a bay doorway one day and watch another teammate disappear. He left the bar and walked the dock lanes under pale morning lights. The air on Kestrel Reach carried dry grit that got into seals and lungs. A planet that made every machine age faster. A cargo handler waved him down near stacked coolant cells. "You're still paying your tab?" the handler asked. Kael nodded. "I pay what I owe," Kael said. The handler shrugged. "Then you're not like most people who come through here," the handler said. Kael kept walking, but the line stayed with him. He thought about what he owed and what cannot be paid back. Miraquel sent one message weeks earlier. It was short and cautious. It did not name him, but he recognized her precision. "There is a supply broker on Kestrel Reach. Follow the batteries, not the guns." Kael followed the batteries. He watched a broker yard on the edge of Ravelin Dock where crates moved at night without manifests. He listened to dock chatter and bought information with quiet cash. A pattern emerged. Same ship name variations. Same shipment weights. Same fake maintenance tags that match Concordium formats. Almost correct. Wrong in ways only an insider would know. Kael realized he was staring at the same kind of mistake Varek used. Not sloppy. Arrogant. On the third night, Kael followed a small courier skiff out past the main lanes. It threaded through dead relay towers and dropped into a ravine where old mining structures leaned like broken ribs. A door in the rock face waited there, too modern for the ruins around it. Kael stopped at a distance and watched. A guard walked the perimeter in a timing loop that never varied. That meant the guard trusted the real defenses more than his own eyes. Kael lifted his optics and saw what the guard trusted. A thin mesh grid shimmered in front of the door, barely visible, tuned to cut anything that moved wrong. A second grid sat behind it, offset, waiting for a panic sprint. A person could walk into that and become debris. A whole team could be fed into it if they came loud and sure. Kael whispered, not as prayer, but as plan. This would kill us all, he said. He did not call Saris. He did not call Kos. He did not ask permission to go where he was not allowed. He chose a false identity and burned his real one. He cut his hair short, changed clothing, and took a dock permit from a man who would not miss it. By dawn, Kael Mercer was gone. A nameless contractor walked toward the door in the rock with calm steps and a steady pulse. The first rule of infiltration was not bravery. It was patience. Kael waited until the guard hit the far turn, then moved into a shadow line cast by a broken tower. He did not cross the mesh grid yet. He placed a small emitter on the ground and angled it toward the shimmer. The device sent a low-power pulse, not to break the grid, but to make it. I think it was reading itself. When the shimmer flickered, Kael stepped through on the exact beat between checks. He kept moving because the grid would correct fast. Inside, the air changed. It smelled filtered and clean, like a ship corridor, not a cave. Kael moved through a narrow passage and found a second door with a fingerprint reader. He did not have a fingerprint that belonged. So he waited. A worker arrived, pushing a cart, head down, mind on routine. Kael stepped out, pressed the Vesper cutter to the worker's belt clip, and stole the access chip without touching skin. The worker did not notice the missing weight. Kael slid through the door behind the cart. Cameras watched the corridor, but they were old models with predictable sweep arcs. Kael timed the arcs and stayed in dead zones. He moved in short bursts, stopping when the floor vibration changed. He listened for footsteps and felt air currents for open spaces. He reached a junction and heard voices, low and amused. He peeked and saw a break room with 3 armed people playing cards, relaxed. They wore mat armor with no black lattice markings. Ash-tide marauders, if the rumor fit. Kael did not shoot. He used a better weapon. He slipped a small interference puck under a table leg. It did not scramble everything, only one band to their local comms. Then he moved on and let the system degrade slowly. People would blame wiring, not an intruder. Farther in, he found the reason the place felt organized. Racks of batteries, clean water tanks, spare parts labeled in careful handwriting. This was not a hideout. This was a base. Kael reached a secure chamber and saw Varek Thorn behind a transparent barrier. Varek was not restrained. He sat at a table with a hot drink, guarded by 2 marauders who watched the corridor with lazy confidence. Varek looked up and smiled like he had been waiting. Kael, Varek said softly. You always arrive late. Kael stepped into the open. You're not a prisoner, Kael said. Varek lifted his drink. Why would I be? Varek said, I deliver results. Kael felt the urge to rush forward and break the barrier. He did not move. Varek leaned closer, eyes bright with cruelty. How did it feel? Varek asked, voice gentle. To watch her fall and do nothing. Kael kept his face. Still, you did not see it, Kael said. Varek's smile widened. I do not need to see it, Varek said. I know you. You think control is strength. Kael answered in the same calm tone he used on battlefields. Control is survival, Kael said. Varek tapped the table with one finger. Survive this, then Varek said. The barrier dropped without warning. The room lights dimmed. It was a trap, but not nets and gas. This trap was social. Down the hall, boots ran as someone shouted orders that did not reach everyone. Kael used the noise. He moved fast, not loud. He crossed the room and drove the Vesper cutter into the table edge, flipping it to create cover. One guard fired, but the shot hit the table instead of Kael. Kael rolled, grabbed the guard's wrist, and turned the weapon away. The guard was strong, but Kael used leverage and timing, not muscle. The second guard rushed in. Kael kicked a chair leg into the guard's knee and sent him down. He snapped cuffs on both guards while their eyes were still wide with surprise. Varric stood, hands empty, posture relaxed. "You think you won," Varric said. "You came alone. That means you already lost the system." Kael stepped close and pressed a restraint band onto Varric's wrists. Varric did not resist. He watched Kael's face like he was hungry for a crack. Kael stared back. "You do not get choices anymore," Kael said. Varric's eyes flicked to the corridor as alarms began to swell. This was not chaotic Sable Ward noise. This was a structured, rising tone. Full lockdown. Kael felt the building tighten around him. Doors sealed. Vent fans increased. He heard distant shouts and a familiar cadence of movement. A train team pushing fast through a corridor. Not marauders. People who cleared rooms like taskforce Helix. Kael dragged Varric toward a service exit. The exit shutter slammed down in front of him. The corridor lights snapped to bright white. A voice echoed from the far junction, sharp with shock. "Kael!" Juno called. "What did you do?" Juno and two Helix operators reached the chamber first, weapons raised, eyes scanning bodies on the floor. Their expressions shifted from threat to disbelief when they saw Varric bound in Kael's grip. Commander Sarisval arrived seconds later, breathing hard, visor reflecting harsh light. She stared at the downed marauders. Then at Kael. "You went rogue," Saris said. Her tone was not anger first. It was fear. Kael did not deny it. "He was here," Kael said. "This was the only window." Saris looked at Varric. "We bring him back," Saris said. "We do it clean." Varric laughed softly. "Clean," Varric said. "Like the convoy?" Juno's jaw tightened. "Shut up," Juno said. Saris stepped closer. "Kael, hand him over," Saris said. Kael did not move. "He will buy his way out again," Kael said. "He will trade names for comfort. He will run, and people will die." Saris held his gaze. "That is not your call," Saris said. Kael shook his head once. "It becomes my call when the system fails twice," Kael said. The air tightened. Helix operators shifted stances, unsure where to aim if the room broke. Juno spoke low. "Kael, we can guard him," Juno said. "We can keep him sealed." Kael looked at Juno. He heard hope in the offer, the belief that law could still work if good people tried harder. Then Kael remembered foam falling, metal tearing, a hand lifting once on the other side of fire. He turned back to Varric. Varric's smile returned, confident, almost grateful. "Do it," Varric whispered. "Prove you're like me." Kael did not answer him. Kael answered the future. He pulled Varric close, placed the muzzle at the base of Varric's skull, and fired one controlled shot. It was fast. It was final. Saris flinched like the bullet hit her. Juno swore under his breath and looked away. Kael stood still, weapon lowered, breathing hard through his mask. "He would not stop," Kael said. "Now he cannot start again." The return to Asterian Bastion was not a triumphant escort. It was a silent transport. Director Oren Koss listened to Saris's report without interruption. When she finished, Koss looked at Kael with a face made of policy and damage control. "You executed a prisoner," Koss said. "You forced the Directorate into a position it cannot defend." Kael said nothing. He had no argument that could fix what he chose. Koss continued, voice flat. "You are discharged. Effective immediately. Your access is revoked. Your service ends here." Kael left the station with no ceremony. He returned to Kestrel Reach because it was the only place that did not demand he pretend to be whole. Weeks passed. He drank again. But alcohol did not numb him the way it used to. He believed Lyra was gone. He believed the story ended in a burning bay. He did not know the Directorate sealed the file after the convoy attack. Lyra's sin, stamped by a unit few people ever saw. The quiet bureau. Kael Mercer had not slept well in months. On Kestrel Reach, night never felt like rest, only a darker kind of waiting. Wind pushed grit through every crack, and dock engines kept walls trembling like a slow heartbeat. He woke on the floor again, cheek against cold metal. A bottle rolled under the table, empty. His shoulders still ached where shrapnel once bit deep. His mind replayed the same images. Fire. Foam. Lyra vanishing into the split bay. Kael sat up and stared at the door until his eyes burned. He told himself the worst part was over. Then he heard a soft knock. Not loud. Not urgent. Just a knock that sounded like someone asking permission to enter a life that was no longer theirs. Kael did not move at first. He waited for the sound to fade, the way hallucinations always did when alcohol thinned. The knock came again. Steady. Patient. Kael pushed himself upright. His hand reached for a weapon that was not there anymore. He crossed the room and pulled the latch. Lyra stood in the doorway. She looked thinner. Her face was sharper. Her eyes were calmer, like pain had been sanded into discipline. Her hair was cut shorter than before. Her posture was too controlled for someone who had just returned from death. Kael's chest tightened until breathing hurt. He blinked hard, convinced his mind was lying. Lyra, he whispered. She stepped inside without asking, then raised a hand and touched his cheek with 2 fingers. Her skin was warm. Real. You look terrible, Lyra said. Kael's mouth opened and closed. No clean words formed. His hands started to shake, not from alcohol now, but from the sudden weight of hope. I watched you fall, Kael said. I watched the hatch take you. Lyra lowered her hand. You watched the section drop, Lyra said. You did not watch me die. Kael swallowed. Ow! Kael asked. Who pulled you out? Lyra hesitated, a rare break in her control. The quiet bureau, Lyra said. Kael felt anger flash. They hid you, Kael said. They contained. A problem, Lyra replied. You were the problem too, Kael. Kael turned away, jaw tight. They discharged me, Kael said. They took my life. Then they kept you in a drawer? Lyra stepped closer. They saved me first, Lyra said. Not from kindness. From cost. Kael looked back. What does that mean? Kael asked. Lyra lifted her hair slightly and exposed the skin behind her ear. A thin seam sat there, clean and surgical. They implanted something, Lyra said. Synapse lattice implant. Kael stared. A brain chip? Kael asked. A neural support module, Lyra said. It sits near integration zones. It boosts processing and reaction timing. It filters sensory load. It can run predictive loops. Kael tried to fit the words into his world. Why you? Kael asked. Lyra did not waver. Because my body was failing, Lyra said. Because they needed an operator who could survive the next assignment. Because they already owned my file after the convoy. Kael stepped closer, voice low. And the cost? Kael asked. Lyra exhaled slowly. The module needs maintenance checks and compliance, Lyra said. If I refuse, it degrades. If it degrades, it can induce seizures and motor lock. Cold spread through Kael. So they put a leash in your head, Kael said. Lyra's mouth tightened. They call it risk management, Lyra said. Kael wanted to smash something. The wall. The table. The empty bottle. He did none of it. He forced his hands to unclench. Why are you here then? Kael asked. Lyra looked down for a moment. Kael saw the smallest crack. Because I asked, Lyra said. Because someone in the bureau remembered what you did for the team. They gave me a window. Kael stared at her, trying to understand a world where love required authorization. How long is the window? Kael asked. Lyra did not answer with numbers. Long enough, she said. They did not talk for a while after that. Kael found water and food that was not bar scraps. Lyra washed her hands at the sink like she was trained to remove more than dirt. Later, they sat on the edge of the bed. The room had no chairs that felt safe. Kael kept glancing at her like she might vanish if he looked away. You killed Varek, Lyra said quietly. Kael flinched. Ceres's face and Juno's voice returned. You know, Kael said. Lyra nodded once. They briefed me, Lyra said. They use your choices as examples. Kael stared at his hands. I did it because I could not stand another escape, Kael said. Lyra's voice softened. The old Lyra peeked through. I know why, Lyra said. I also know what it cost you. Kael looked up. It cost me everything, Kael said. Lyra leaned in, close enough that Kael felt her breath. Then do not waste what is left, Lyra said. For a few days, life became small, almost normal. Kael walked with her along the dock lanes at sunrise when the air was cooler. Lyra listened to sound around them, not with fear, but with analysis Kael could not miss. A cargo crane squealed and a loose bolt clattered in a chute. Lyra turned instantly and tracked it like a threat. Kael watched her. Does it stop? Kael asked. Lyra answered honestly. Not really, Lyra said. At night, Kael slept for real, deeper than he had in months. He woke once and found Lyra sitting upright, eyes open, listening to the building. She did not look frightened. She looked like a sentry. You should sleep, Kael said. Lyra shook her head. The module runs background loops, Lyra said. It keeps me awake if the pattern shifts. Kael sat up. That sounds like torture, Kael said. Lyra shrugged. It sounds like survival, Lyra said. On the fifth night, Kael noticed her hand drift toward a small device on the table. It was a comm unit, compact, hardened, with a Concordium encryption shell. It chimed once, soft and short. Lyra's fingers snapped to it and killed the sound instantly. Her face did not change, but Kael caught a tiny tightening around her eyes. Kael kept his voice steady. Was that them? Kael asked. Lyra held his gaze for a long second. It was nothing, Lyra said. Kael did not believe her. He also did not press. He knew what fear looked like when it wore discipline. Lyra stood and walked to the window, eyes scanning dock lights. I need you to hear me, Lyra said. This is real. Us here now, but it is not safe. Kael rose slowly. When? Kael asked. Lyra did not answer with a date. Soon, she said. Kael watched her silhouette against the glass and understood the worst part. The war had not ended. It had simply found a new way to enter their room. Kael woke to silence. Not the usual dock rumble. Not distant voices from a bar. The room felt hollow, like the air had been replaced. He sat up fast, eyes scanning. The bed beside him was empty. No heat. No movement. Lyra, he called. No answer. Kael crossed the room in 2 steps. The latch was locked from the inside. Then he saw it. The lock had been reset. Opened, then closed again. On the table, a single sheet of paper lay under the comm unit. Paper felt out of place in a world of screens. That made it deliberate. Kael picked it up with careful fingers. I had to go, the note said. Do not follow the obvious trail. I do not know when I will be back. Kael read it twice. On the second pass, his stomach sank. The words were too clean. Lyra did not write like that when she was relaxed. She wrote like that when someone might read over her shoulder. He went to the window and looked down at Ravelin Dock. People moved in lanes, busy and unknowing. A transport shuttle lifted in the distance, engines bright against morning haze. Kael felt anger rise, but it had nowhere to go. No officer to shout at. No chain of command to appeal to. Only empty space where Lyra had been. He sat on the bed and forced himself to breathe. He could drink again. He could disappear back into numbness. Instead, he read the note again and looked for what Lyra would hide inside plain words. Do not follow the obvious trail. Lyra and Kael had a habit from training days. They had signals and routine phrases when communications were compromised. Kael tilted the paper and saw faint pressure marks, the kind left by a stylus or a hard nail. At first it looked like nothing. Then his mind locked onto a pattern. He traced the letters with a fingertip until a message formed. Not safe. Bureau is watching. Wrong ship. Kael's mouth went dry. Wrong ship? He whispered. He understood fast. The Bureau wanted to see who moved. They wanted to see if Kael was a risk again. Lyra was not only leaving for an assignment. She was being moved, and she did not trust the move. Kael went to the sink and splashed water on his face. He stared into the cracked mirror and saw a man hollowed out and refilled with one last purpose. He tried to forget war. War sent him a note and took the bed beside him. Kael did not touch the comm unit. He assumed it might be tagged. He found a clean piece of paper and wrote a list the old way. No network. No trace. Who still owed him? Who still believed he was not a reckless traitor? Junocade. Miraquel. If she could speak without being seen. A dock broker who once took Kael's money, then returned it because Kael saved his cousin in a port fire. Kael stared at the list and realized something else. Lyra did not write "I love you." She wrote, "Do not follow the obvious trail." That was her version of love now. A warning meant to keep him alive. Kael folded the note and put it inside his jacket, close to his chest. He did not feel calm. He felt clear. "I will not lose you twice," Kael said. Kael moved like he was back on mission, but this time there was no badge to shield him. He shaved, changed clothes, and left his old jacket behind. He walked dock lanes, watched faces, listened to conversations, and avoided cameras with habits that once saved an entire team. By midday, he found the broker. The broker ran a small fuel depot behind a rusted wall of storage tanks. The broker eyed Kael and frowned. "You look sober," the broker said. "That is new. I need a route," Kael said. "A quiet one." The broker leaned back, weighing risk. "You have no clearance," the broker said. "I have no patience," Kael replied. The broker sighed and tapped a map on an old tablet. "There's a cargo shuttle leaving tonight," the broker said. "Registered as scrap haul." "It is a lie. It goes to a relay hub, then splits. If you get on, you will owe me again." Kael nodded. "I will pay," Kael said. Kael found a comm booth that still took cash. He did not call Saris. He did not call Koss. He called Juno Cade. Juno answered on the third ring, voice cautious. "Kael, where are you?" Juno asked. "I am on Kestrel Reach," Kael said. "Lyra is alive." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "What did you just say?" Juno asked. "She came back," Kael said. Then she was taken again. She left a warning. "I need eyes on a transport list." Quietly. "Can you do that?" Juno's voice hardened. "They told us she was gone," Juno said. "They told us the file was closed." "They lied," Kael said. Juno paused. "If I help you, I risk my career," Juno said. Kael kept his tone even. "I do not have a career," Kael said. "I have a person." Another pause. Then Juno spoke, quieter. "Send me the ship registry you think is wrong," Juno said. "I will look. No promises." Kael gave the details the broker shared, careful and minimal. He ended the call and stepped into the wind, feeling the first hint of forward motion in weeks. He returned to the room only long enough to pack essentials. A compact tool kit, a spare comm battery, the note. He left the bottles behind. At dusk, Kael reached the loading bay where the cargo shuttle waited. Its hull was scarred, and its lights were dimmed to avoid attention. A dock worker checked Kael's pass and barely looked up. "You are late," the worker muttered. Kael stepped up the ramp. He stopped at the threshold and looked back at the lights of Ravelin Dock, a place where he buried the last version of himself. Then he walked inside and let the ramp seal shut behind him. As the shuttle lifted into the dark, Kael felt no triumph. He felt a single stubborn decision settle into place. He was going back into the fight, not for medals and not for vengeance. For one woman who tried to warn him with a piece of paper. Kael Mercer did not leave Kestrel Reach to be a hero again. He left because some battles do not end when the shooting stops. Somewhere out there, Lyra Sen was still moving in the dark, carrying a secret that could break more than one life. Kael was done waiting for permission to love someone back from the edge. The shuttle lights dimmed. The engines steadied, and the war, quiet as a breath, followed him into the stars. If this story pulled you in, help me keep building this universe. Hit like so more people can find it. Share it with a friend who loves sci-fi, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next part. Because the next mission is already in motion.